prefer to start with elastoplastic contact modeling and also with heterogeneous materials because it will be useful for fretting wear simulation and so on, because we try also to model fretting wear for materials with including either coatings or inclusions. Okay, then the first talk will be about elastoplastic contact modeling, which is in fact the base, and the second talk will be about heterogeneous materials. Then the motivation of this work came first about the effect of debris denting. As you know, I am mostly working for aerospace applications, and in these applications we manage to have always contact load which is quite low, so everything remains in the elastic domain. However, it's very difficult to avoid the presence of contamination, and then because you cannot in the oil you can use a filter, but if the filter is too small, too fine, it can clog due to the presence of additives and so on. Then you have always some particles flowing into the contact. I will show you some measurement of filtration quality of oil. You will see that. And then there is always debris denting. And today this is the first mode of failure of rolling bearings for aerospace applications. Today steels are very clean, and then it's difficult to avoid denting. So this is today the first mode of failure. Until 2000, researchers were mostly working with the elastic model because it was more convenient and it was very difficult to perform elastic plastic simulations. Then today we can do that. Although there is a few things about plasticity. There is two effects. The first one is that it modifies the surface geometry. For example, if you have a flat surface, if you impact the surface with a particle or with a ball, like a shot pinning, you will observe a dent. Okay? The same if you exceed the static load of a bearing. The static load is defined as a load at which you can start to measure some surface imprint. Then this is the definition of a static load for a bearing. Then typically if you exceed 4 gigapascal of load on a classical bearing, you will start to see a mark. Then this is the first effect, modification of the surface geometry. And the second effect is the introduction of residual stresses. And when you unload the contact, you will observe that you don't have zero as a residual stress everywhere. You have a distribution of residual stresses. You may also account for pre-existing residual stresses due to manufacturing process or due to heat treatment. Then the objective of this work at the end is to be able to predict rolling contact fatigue. This is the first objective. And there is a second objective, which is to be able also to predict wear. Because so when you remove particles, in fact, there is some plasticity, some local plasticity, and so you can be able to predict wear. Then to be able to perform a simulation of a laptop like that, for a 3D problem, which is in fact a 4D problem because there is a 3 dimension in space and one in time. And it's very costly. If you know the finite element method, when you need a fine mesh, it's almost impossible today to do that. And then now we can perform such type of analysis. Just to go back to the past. I know that today most students they mostly read what you can find in the literature on the internet, mostly recent papers, but there is a lot of very interesting old papers. As I said yesterday, the EHL problem was simulated by Hertel and Grubin in the 40s, and in the 60s it was possible to observe the EHL film thickness, and you can see on the left part of the screen. Okay, here you can see here the peak of pressure. It has been calculated by Dawson and Gilson in the 70s, And you can see that on the top you have the pressure distribution, and below you have the stress field. You can see that the stress field, again, you have the Hertzian depth here, where the stress is maximum, and you have close to the peak of pressure, some increase of the stress close to the surface. But this is a very specific phenomenon, and in fact there is almost no effect on the fatigue of the material, mostly because the peak is very small. When you have higher is the load, smaller is the peak. And this simulation is performed for something which is incompressible, a fluid which is incompressible, and in fact it is slightly compressible, then even with that the peak is smaller. And this is not very important for what we are speaking about. In the 70s, I did my PhD with Professor Bert, Daniel Bert, a French professor. He died very, very young. When I started, he was alive, and when I finished my PhD at the end of the 80s, he died. It was maybe 45, something like that. But he was a very clever man. He was my teacher, always smoking during the lecture, with mixing with the quay and the cigarette and everything. But he was able to do all the demonstration on the blackboard without any notes and only with mathematics and so on. He was one of the first to be able to solve the roof contact problem at that time. This is purely elastic, but he did that numerically in the 80s, which was quite complicated because the computers were not very performant at that time. And the first IBM PC came early in the 80s. When I was a student in 81, we started to have the first computer. And just to remember, at that time it was more complicated than today. For young people, you don't imagine how it was at that time. Okay, and then what you can observe here, in fact, what you have to keep in mind is that each asperity, this is a sinusoidal asperity, roughness. Each asperity acts as a micro Hertz contact. Okay. Then, if you are interested only by if you know the wavelength of the asperity, the amplitude of the asperity, you can calculate analytically the peak of pressure. The same theory as the Hertz. And a lot of people have been working on that, especially in England. I think about Chris Hook or Jim Greenwood, and they were able to provide the full analytical solution of that. Okay, this is a numerical solution. Then, at the beginning, most people deal with a 2D problem because it was simpler and required less computing resource. Then they switch to 3D problem. I will speak a little more about friction. You can see here the effect of friction. There is some dissymmetry of the stress distribution when you add here 10% of friction, which is 0.1 coefficient of friction. Okay, then this is a solution for 3D. And last centuries and a long time ago, people starting to work on coatings. One of the most famous paper is by O'Sullivan in 1988, which is a reference paper when you want to do your own code. If you want to compare your solution to the literature solutions, you have to go back to this first paper by O'Sullivan in 88. And then in the 90s, we were able to start to perform some elastic plastic simulation. You can see here, this is the presence of coating. You can see here the presence of the coating with a discontinuity between the coating and the substrate. And you can see here some elastoplastic simulation, 3D simulation. In fact, it was published mostly in the early 2000s. The full, complete first solution was published in 2002. As you can see here in red, you have the elastic solution, and in green, you have the elastic plastic solution. As I said yesterday, the integral of the pressure is the same for both models, but because this is a 3D model, this is axis symmetric, then this is not the area which is important, this is the volume which is important. This is then each time, in fact, the red corresponds somewhat to the maximum stress and also to the yield limit This is the case here. When you have plasticity, you don't reach, you decrease very quickly the stress level. And here, this is not the same scale, but anyway, this is what you can observe when you unload the contact. Then when you unload the contact, you have residual stresses. And when it is positive, then when it is red, you have tensile stress. And when it is blue, this is a compressive stress. What you can observe here is that you have compressive stress only in small part, and at the Hertzian depth, you have some tensile stress close to the surface, and at the border of the contact. And the border of the contact, in fact, is a domain which is in tension. Okay, then the objective is to be able to perform a rolling contact fatigue analysis. It is also possible now to deal with a real surface. Okay, this is possible mostly for elastic problem. Now, if you have elastic plastic problem, it is more complicated. You need some resource to compute that. It depends if the plasticity is only localized at the surface, or if there is also plasticity far from the surface. I will speak about that later. Okay, and then we can perform a transient analysis. And there is many applications. We did some applications to simulation of grinding, wear, running, all of this fretting wear, wheel road contact, and so on, shot pinning, ultrasonic shot pinning. I will show you some results, and also the wear of coated surface. Just to go back, how we did that. In fact, we went back to the paper by Hsu. Then in the document, in the document there is a file. I put the 3 papers by Hsu. In fact, Hsu was working. I knew this guy because I met him several times in this conference. I was able to ask him some questions about some equations because many equations were wrong in his papers. Then we had to correct everything. I lost the corrected paper manually, but we corrected all our equations. Anyway, he was working for Torrington at that time. And one time I asked him why did he use to publish papers? Because when you work in company, it's complicated to take time to write a paper, including especially when there is a lot of mathematics inside. And it was very clever. It was a pioneering work. And he said that I use it because each time I publish a paper, my company gave me $500. And it was surprising because the quality of the work was excellent, and it was just for money. Then something strange. Then what he did was to study the effect of a cuboid in infinite space using the HLB theory. HLB published papers in the 50s, 57 I think, and he used that to calculate analytically what will happen for a half space. Then he published a first paper for infinite space, the second one for half space, and he was able to, moving the cuboid below the surface, he was able to calculate the displacement everywhere in the half space, including also then the strain and the stress, and then it was possible to calculate the surface deformation due to the presence of a plastic cuboid. And one of the tricks in this is that, I don't know if you know, but normally when you are in the plastic regime, the material behaves like incompressible. Okay, which means that when you calculate the trace of the strain tensor, epsilon 1 plus epsilon 2 plus epsilon 3 equals 0, because this is the definition of incompressibility. And then this is very useful to calculate analytically the solutions of that. I will show you later. And also, we use the work of Léon Kir, a very famous professor from Northwestern University. He had a very good student, Polonsky, Ivan Polonsky. I met him when I was working in this university. And they published an excellent paper, how to solve a contact problem with using fast Fourier transform. Then it's a lot of time. This is also the pioneering work. This is the first paper, the first referenced paper on this topic. Japanese researcher with Kato did some similar work a few years before, but they did not optimize fast Fourier transform. They had some trouble with the number of with the definition of the domain and so on. It was not so performant than the work of Leon Kir and Polanski. Polanski, after the PhD thesis, decided to switch and to move to go to work in a bank to get money. Then he did some computer software to help the bank to optimize their money. So, and then Jen Wang is continuing the work of Professor Kir. Now she, in the US, they are never retired, but Jen Wang is continuing the work. Also, some work was done in Romania by Professor Crețu, also by Gabriel Popescu and Spinu. Spinu continued to publish a few works, but he published mostly papers in Romanian journal, which are in English. But okay, he's a clever guy. He's only following what other people are doing. But okay, and then other people in 20, Schipper did some work, and also now a lot of former students of Jen Wang are dealing with that. And there is also people by SKF, Guillermo Morales, and also in Germany. So this is what I would like to present you just now. Then I will focus on the elastic plastic contact problems, and I will describe the methodology, the theory, and I will focus the first lecture on that. And this afternoon I will go back for the effect on rolling contact fatigue when you have some inclusions, but before I will present the heterogeneous materials background. Okay, then I will. This will be for later. Okay, then what we call semi-analytical method. This is because we use exact analytical solutions, okay, but just for a single cuboid. Then, based on the work of Xu, this is the exact solution. And now, because in the reality we have not a single cuboid, because we discretize the half space in many cuboids, we may have several cuboids that are elastic plastic. Then we need to solve that numerically. We need to add, to superimpose the effect of each cuboid. This is the principle. This is why we call that semi-analytical. In fact, other researchers, because there is another name which is the boundary element method. Then you know this technique. In fact, this is the same. For me, the main difference is that for the boundary element method, you have a general external surface. Okay, it can be any shape. But for us to find the analytical solution, we need to have a very simple shape. And then for us, this is just the boundary element method applied to cuboid, and then we calculate analytically the solution. But this is the same principle. This is the principle is to avoid to have a 3D integration within a volume, and to transform this integration into the volume to the integration on the surface of the element. Then you save one dimension. This is the principle. And this is very similar to what we call the Green's functions that can be used in solid mechanics, also in heat transfer and so on. This is the same principle. Then again, we have the same assumptions. We need half space bodies, which means that the contact dimension is small compared to the dimension of the part. We have the assumption of small strains and displacement. In fact, we may have a large strain, but we need small increments. It's not possible to calculate the solution after one iteration. It's the same as the for the finite element method. When you deal with nonlinear problem, you cannot get the solution after one time step. You need several increments. Due to plasticity, due to friction, when you have friction, it's the same. You cannot get the solution after. You can numerically get the solution, but if you do that, this is wrong. You have to be careful. You have to impose several time steps. And one of the limitations compared to the finite element method is that we need a uniform mesh in each direction. Okay? With the finite element method, you can have a mesh which is very fine in the domain of interest, close to the contact, and then when you go far away, you have a very coarse mesh. Not for us. We need to have the same mesh everywhere. In fact, this is not a problem. And even for plasticity, we only deal with the plastic cuboid. We don't care about what it is outside. Then it's not really a problem. But this is the principle of the method. And then with that, we started first by plasticity. Then we did some work on the presence of inclusions, heterogeneities, fibers, coatings, and so on. Then we switched to elastic viscous effect. And now we are working a lot on this topic, especially for example, for contact between the wheel and the road. I don't know if you have that in India, because your roads are not excellent everywhere, but in France, for example, if you go to the highway, when you drive, we drive on the right. When you drive on the right side, where all the trucks are rolling, there is some furrows, some valley due to the rolling of trucks with very heavy loads. And also when you have some turnabout, there is also a lot of mark like that. Then there is some relation with the elastic viscous effect. And also we are working for Michelin company to try to improve the adhesion of tire on the roads. Everything is viscoelastic. This is very interesting, but this is another dimension of complexity. And the complexity comes from the fact that you should keep in mind the history of the contact. Okay? Every time you should have in mind you should keep in mind, record the history of the contact. Okay, then maybe the last point is that also we use for the algorithm some return mapping algorithm to find the elastic plastic solution. This is very well known for people that are working in the finite element method development. And typically what we can do is that we can save 1 or 2 dimensions. What you can do, for example, with the finite element method in a 2D, we can do that in 3D in the same time, or even 3D plus transient effect. Then we can save at least 1 or 2 dimensions. Okay. And today it's almost impossible to do a viscoelastic 3D problem. For transient problem, it's almost impossible to do that with the finite element method. And this is the principle. Then we use a solution of love. Also love, it's published the solution of the displacement, strain, and stress field in the half space when it is loaded by a uniform load on a rectangular area. Then, based on the Hertz work, Cerruti and Boussinesq, they gave all the solution, and what he did was just to integrate that on a square, on a rectangle, which is not too difficult, but then the love solution corresponds to the red pillar here. And as I said yesterday, the displacement of one point which is far from the contact, or which is within the contact, depends on the integration on the sum of the effect of each rectangular patch. This is the principle. This is right for a point which is at the surface, and also for a point which is below the surface. When you have to solve the contact problem, usually you just want to know the pressure distribution. Then you are just interested by the surface problem. You don't have to compute what it is below. You just need to compute what it is below when you want to know, for example, the stress. Then you can calculate, but it's not difficult. The first problem is to solve the pressure distribution to get the correct solution. Then, as I said before, semi-analytical method means by the fact that we make a summation of all these elementary solutions. We are also able to solve the problem when you have normal and tangential solicitation. And in fact, we use the same principle as calcaire. Calcaire guy from Netherlands, he published a book on rolling contact, and typically considering tractive contact. Then tractive contact means that there is one part of the contact which is in sliding, what part it is which is sticking, when sliding. And I will add a talk last day, Thursday. I will present some work on the tractive contact based on the work of Calcaire. But at that time, Calcaire, although he published a book, he published software that he sold to many companies, but it was able to solve the contact problem only for a very coarse mesh, typically 5, 6, 7 elements in each direction. Then it was just possible to have an idea of the contact area, but it was not very, very fine. And again, then these are the most important paper then by Calcaire for the minimization of the complementary energy, which is used to solve the contact problem. Polonsky and Keir for the CGM, the conjugate gradient method and the fast Fourier transform. And so later by Liu and Zhu that have been working. K? K is like a Green function. Small k. Okay. Because here this is a displacement for a point. Then this is at the surface. You have I correspond to x, g to y. Then this is a point. For example, this one you are interested by knowing the normal displacement of a point which is here, u ig. Okay. And then it depends on the load which is here, and then I minus k correspond to the distance between this point and this point, or this point and this point. Okay? Then k and L. K typically is the distance along the x direction, and L is the distance along the y direction. No, this one.
This is for solution of the displacement and stresses?
Yes. This is to solve the contact problem. In fact, it is when we estimate for example, the initial pressure distribution. For example, we start by the Hertz solution. This is the initial pressure distribution, and then this is a way to optimize the convergence. Then,
Normally we do potential minimization.
but I think it's similar. I don't know too much about fluid mechanics.
Maybe this is nonlinear program. Complementary energy becomes relevant. But okay.
In fact, this is a nonlinear problem in the sense that you don't know the contact area. If you have just one single pressure, this is elastic, this is purely linear. Even if you have two contact pressure, or if you have 2, 3 n elements, this is purely linear. But now it is non-linear because you don't know the pressure and you don't know the contact area. Then you need some numerical techniques, and this is typically non-linear. When you deal with the finite element method, there is 3 types of non-linearity. The first one is when the material is non-linear, viscoelastic, elastic plastic, and so on. The second one is when you have a large displacement, large strain. And the third one is when you have contact problem. Because, for example, if you plot the displacement when you indent the surface, if you plot the displacement versus the load, this is non-linear due to the fact that you don't know the contact area and you don't know the pressure distribution. But I think it's quite similar with what you said with the potential method. Okay, then then what it is well known is elasticity. Then we are interested to know the pressure distribution, the shear distribution at the surface, everything elastic. Also, we can deal with normal and tangential problem. We can deal with stick and slip problem because you can have a gross slip or a partial slip. Then 2 types of things. As I said before, the elementary solutions come from Boussinesq for the normal contact problem, Cerruti from the tangential one, and Love that did the integration of that to have numerical solution. Then for plasticity, in fact, what we do is we consider that one element is plastic, then it becomes incompressible. Okay, and for inhomogeneities, in fact, the work is based on the work of Eshelby. I don't know if you try to look in the past century, who was the most cited researcher. I did that many years ago, but I think it should be the same. Eshelby is one of the most famous one. It should be in the top 10. Okay, a lot of foundation for many numerical methods are based on his work. And Azo Mura in Japan did a lot of work là-dessus. Then he considered something then that he didn't call that inclusion, he called that heterogeneity. Okay, I will go back to that later. And it can be of any shape. And this time, the difference between plasticity and heterogeneity is that the heterogeneity is not incompressible. It can be incompressible. Okay. And this is a principle of Eshelby. Then the solution he provided in 1957 was the following. In fact, he considered an heterogeneity within infinite space submitted to a uniform load, uniform stress loading far from the heterogeneity. This is the question he wanted to solve. Then on the left you can see two different colors because it means that the materials are different. Okay, let's say the blue one is like inclusion, as we call, but and the green one is like the matrix. And he said that this problem is equivalent to this one. This is what we call the equivalent inhomogeneity method, IEM. Then he considered that now this heterogeneity is of the same material as a matrix, plus what he called incompatibility heterogeneity. Then there is here an epsilon star. Here you can see the star. This is the incompatibility strain. And adding that, the two problems are equivalent. Which means that now your infinite body is made of the same material. And this is very elegant because you can use the solution for isotropic homogeneous materials. Okay. And then this is the equivalent equations. The problem on the left is equivalent to the problem on the right. Okay. And then this is what happened in the I means inclusions. This is for the inclusion. This is for the matrix, and both problems are equivalent. And to calculate epsilon star, yes, we use what we call the Eshelby tensor, which is given by this tensor of order 4. Okay, then this is the base of the theory, and then we can calculate the strain within the inclusion and outside the inclusion using two tensors D and S. And also we have to deal with the two potentials. One is harmonic, and the first one is harmonic, and the second one is a biharmonic. In fact, it's not too complicated for an infinite space. Now you have to deal with all the equations to solve that properly, and now to transfer that to half space. And this is the principle of the half space. And this was done by Xu. Then I think he published the first paper for the infinite space in 1977, and the second one for the half space 1 year later. Then in the principle, when you have only one inclusions like that, if you cut the surface here to have half space, the solution is obtained like that. You have in fact the mirror solution. When you have like that the mirror inclusion, it means that the surface here remains flat by symmetry. Okay. After you have to be careful because it can be symmetric or anti-symmetric. For example, for the vertical direction, there is a symmetry. Now, if you consider the x direction, it should be anti-symmetric. Because if you want to have this point not moving, you should have two opposite effects in the plane of the L space here. Then this is this part, and also you have to consider the normal stress which is produced by the effect of the two inclusions. You can imagine that if the inclusions are coming closer and closer, they can create stress between the two, and then you have to calculate the effect. And the effect of the inclusion on the surface here is due to the work of HLB. And this is a solution of HLB. Okay, then now to solve the problem, we have many integrations. We have volumic integrals. The two first ones are volumic integrals. The last one is a surface problem. Then the surface problem is not too complicated because there is only two dimensions. And to accelerate the calculations, the idea is to use a fast Fourier transform to work in the frequency domain. Okay, then this is the algorithm, but I don't want to. This is only if you want to develop your own code, you have to work like that. Okay, then this is a schematic of the procedure. Then first we solve the elastic contact problem. We start first by that. We calculate the pressure distribution. Then knowing the pressure distribution, we are able to calculate within the materials the stress everywhere. And then when the stress reaches the yield limit, you have some plasticity. Then we consider that the cuboid is plastic. We give a value to the plastic strain. Then what we call the equivalent plastic strain, which is very similar to the von Mises stress. Which is something equivalent, because here we have a tensor with many different terms, and this is used to define the plasticity level. And after we work on each component to calculate the plastic strain tensor in each direction. And then when we do that, I don't know what is the next slide, but yes, when we do that, we imagine that, okay, you can see here the plastic domain. With the dashed line, it corresponds to the domain which is affected by the inclusion here. Then, in fact, plasticity is only limited to this domain. Okay, if you plot epsilon p, the equivalent plastic strain, you will see only plasticity here, and everything will be without plasticity outside. Now, if you plot stress, in fact, you will see stresses far away from the inclusion, because you have to equilibrate the stress field, and then this is why residual stresses are going far away from the inclusion. Then now what is important here is when you unload the contact, you will observe a residual print. Okay, this is the indent, in fact. Then the idea is very simple. Is now we record this displacement, and we consider that initial geometry is not anymore flat, but it's perturbated. And we add this deformation to the initial geometry. And then we redo a calculation. Okay? And we can solve that very quickly. After a few iterations, we got the solution. This is the principle. On the left here, these are in fact, the numerical, the analytical solutions of the influence coefficient. It works like that. Okay, this is funny because due to the work of Xu, we got the integral solution, but not the analytical one. And the integral solution was quite complicated. First, we tried to solve that to use Maple or Mathematica, okay, formal software to solve integrals and so on. We were able to get 1 or 2 integrals, but not 6. It crashed very quickly because there is some singularities, and you have to do that by hand, and not, you know, when you have integrals, you can separate in several terms. But when you have singularities in each term, you cannot solve that. And when you have all the terms all together, the singularity are remove themselves. Okay, this is a principle. And then there is this is what I call the influence coefficient. There is 3 index here, 3, 1, 1, for example. The first index 3 means the direction. Then this is the influence coefficient given the displacement along the z direction. For me, z is vertical, normal to the surface. And 1, 1 means epsilon 1, 1. The plastic strain, epsilon 1, 1, this element. Then after, you have the effect of epsilon 2, 2, epsilon 3, 3, and then after, cross term, epsilon 1, 2, epsilon 1, 3, epsilon 2, 3. Yes, 2, 3. Okay. Then you can see from that, for example, that we only got the solution for the normal displacement. Okay, and then, as I said before, if you remember the work of Hsu, for the half space problem, we have to use the influence coefficient for the problem of the original inclusion, the first one which is below the surface. The second term is for the mirror inclusion, which is symmetric or anti-symmetric, it depends on the term. And the last term is due to the distribution of pressure at the surface. Okay? And then this is a procedure, and we can then calculate stresses within the materials and also the displacement at the surface, which is important to solve the contact problem. Okay, let's go now to maybe yes, maybe I will speak about the Betti reciprocal theorem. I've seen a paper by Spinu last year or recently. Again, he came back to that. You can see that okay, the okay, this is a thermoelastic solution, but anyway. Then the first term here is the displacement of one point of the surface. This is the elastic term, in fact. Elastic term, then P is the normal contact pressure, and this is this term corresponds to the influence coefficient, in fact. The second term corresponds to plasticity. Then this is the effect of plasticity, epsilon P. Then when you have elastic problem, you don't have this term. When you have a plastic problem, you have this term. And the third term corresponds to the thermal effect, if you want to consider temperature. And then knowing the displacement, we can calculate the stress field. And as I said before, the first term corresponds to elastic, then sigma E means elastic, sigma R means residual. Okay. You know that there is no plastic stress. Stress are always elastic, but there is a contribution that can be from thermal effect or from residual stresses. And this is a thermal term. Okay, then now here you can see Py, then Py means when you have P3, 3 is vertical, this is the pressure, and when you have P1 or P2, this is the shear stress. Or sometimes we call that Q1 or Q2. And everything has been done by Boussinesq and Cerutti, and this is also explained in the Johnson book. These are the terms for residual displacement, the terms that account for plasticity, and the last term has been given by Liu and Wang from Northwestern. Then this is how we solve the problem. Then on the left, you have the solution by Boussinesq, which is only the normal contact pressure. And on the right, you have the shear stress given by Cerutti. Then they gave this solution. This is the displacement, the analytical solution of displacement due to a load, a unit load at this point. Then you can calculate here for each point at the surface or below the surface. When Z is different from 0, this is below the surface. And the same for solution from Cerutti. And here this is knowing the displacement, you can calculate the strain, and then we can calculate here the influence coefficient.
Z equal to 0 also we can do it.
Yes, this is correct for z equal 0. Just note that here z is always positive. It should not be negative. Always positive. Okay. Now, if you look at, I don't know if it is here, for example, these expressions, you can find in the literature two sets of equations, because due to the integration, these are the integral form. Okay, these are the integral form given by Xu typically, and these are the analytical solution. In the literature, sometimes you can find something slightly different, because when you have arctangent like that, there is other ways to express the expression. Okay, but okay, these are the correct solutions. Then, knowing that we were able with the d, the influence coefficient here. Now, when you use that here, you have all these equations, and the first set here is due to Jacques for normal effect, and the second set is due to another PhD student, Fuller-Ringer, which is working for Safran now. Okay, and then we had to solve that, and the same for this one. The 2 or 3 were very easy to get. He got that during his master, and it took 6 months to get the 3 others by hand, because Mathematica and Maple were not able to find the solution. I have also today an excellent student that is working on micro-pitting, and he's trying to get an analytical solution. He's very clever, he's a mathematician, and he prefers to do everything by hand. Okay, and then these are the terms, and where come from the effect of a cuboid. In fact, we have to integrate the effect on the cuboid here. Then there is different face or different points. You have 8 nodes for the cuboid, and then when you know the face, you can calculate the effect of a cuboid on the deformation. Just quickly on the fast Fourier transform, something funny is that when you do that, in fact, when you do the FFT, you come to the complex domain. Okay. When you go back, when you do an inverse FFT, you go back to the real domain. And one of the tricks is to use the complex domain to perform 2 simulations at the same time. We put in the real number and the imaginary number 2 different sets of data, and in the same fast Fourier transform and inverse fast Fourier transform, we do 2 simulations at the same time. Then, okay, just a factor of 2, but everything is okay. This is the explanation of how we do that. You can see here, for example, we put 1 term here and 1 term in the imaginary part. So instead of 7 fast Fourier transform, we do only 4 fast Fourier transform. Instead of 6, only 3 inverse fast Fourier transform, and only 3 products instead of 6. The same for the strain, for the displacement, and so on. Okay, now let's go to some results and some physics, because I am mostly interested by the physics that is behind that. Then there is 2 types of hardening, isotropic and kinematic. Then the isotropic hardening means that you know when you do a test, here is the stress, the strain. This is the elastic behavior. When you exceed, for example, the initial yield stress strains here, you start to have plasticity. Okay. Now, if you go to this point, this is loading, this is the Young modulus. Now, if you unload, you will follow the same Young modulus. Okay. And when you reload again, until this point, this is an elastic behavior, which means that now this is a new elastic limit. Okay? And now if you go further until this point, you do the same, you reload, and which means that sigma y will increase. This is typically what we call isotropic hardening. Okay? And for the kinematic hardening, in fact, the yield limit, yield strength is the same, in fact, but when you go in the opposite direction, in fact, you may have some plasticity during unloading, but when you have tensile and compression stresses, the idea is that the variation is the same, is always the same. This is explained here. You move, in fact, the sphere of the domain, the yield limit, just move in space, but somewhere the yield strength is about the same. Then we use the Van Mises criterion for yielding because it's spherical, numerically it's simpler. Okay, then two types of models that we use. And this is for isotropic modeling. I used to work with a Swift law, which is given by that. Why a Swift law? Because we did many tests for surface-treated materials, such as nitrided material or cemented materials. And we were able to demonstrate that experimentally that you can have the same C constant. P means the plastic strain here. P is the plastic strain. Then you have here two constants, C and N, the power N, for a given material. And what's changed is only the B constant. You have a B value for the surface. And for example, if it is harder at the surface, you will have a change of B value for each layer. Okay, and we proposed the methodology to identify that, and we did that for several bearing materials, such as 32 CDV13, M50 NIL, M50 duplex, and so on. And for the kinematic hardening, we work with the classical Armstrong-Frederick hardening law, which is given by this equation. Then there is a change of the center of the sphere, plastic sphere. This is just a plot to show you this type of strain-stress curve. You can see here, okay, what you can observe is that there is not a big difference between isotropic and kinematic. Okay, because you have a given shape, you need to fit your parameters to this to the experimental curve that you have, and typically this is here just a comparison between these two laws. This is the first remark. The second remark is that you can see here that the yield strength is very high. Okay, in the order of 1,400. Normally, a classical steel, construction steel, the yield strength is 235, for example, which is like aluminium. And then this is the specificity of bearing steel, which are very, very strong, very, very stiff. Okay, now I will, with this model, I will compare two types of loading. First, indentation, which is vertical loading and unloading. Okay, and after rolling, which is quite different. This is what I will show you today. Now is only for a frictionless contact. We use here a ceramic ball. Why a ceramic ball? It is because we did experiments with a ceramic ball, and it was to have only an elastic plastic material. And we were interested by the half space, which is a steel bearing material. IACI 52100 steel. Okay, then you load and you unload. You can see the print. This is very schematic. In fact, it's not with there is no peak. It's very rounded, in fact. And as we discussed last evening, the size of the imprint is not the size of the contact area. Okay, it should be larger. But this is a schematic view. Okay, and now what happens if you have rolling contact? Okay, what you can observe here is, in fact, here you have the initial surface, and here you have the deformed surface. In fact, you have a groove after the ball. Okay, before the ball, in front of the ball, you have a flat surface, and because you have some plasticity, after the ball, you have like a groove. Okay. If you want to have a view of that, this is like that. Okay, this is exactly what you have here. And this is a simulation. We did experiment, and I will maybe show you. We got an excellent agreement between with the shape. Okay. Ah, did a mistake. Excuse me. I should do like that. No. And there is some machining that use a ball like that, and you can deform the surface. I don't know the name in the galtage in French. Okay, there is a technique. Okay, the tool is static and the part is rotating here, for example, and like that you can plastify the surface of the material. This is a technique to harden the material. Okay, then I will show you some results for several cycles, and we will compare isotropic and kinematics hardening. And after I will also move to a contact which is not a sphere on a flat, but that can be an ellipsoid on a flat. Okay, I tell you that yesterday. On the left, you have the elastic solution. In the middle, you have the complete elastic plastic solution. And here, you have the solution, partial solution, without residual stresses. This is not the correct solution. It's good for the pressure distribution and for the gap between the two surfaces in contact, but not for the stress. This is what I tried to do this morning. Then this is von Mises stress, and here this is the effect of the friction coefficient. So friction coefficient will increase from 0 to 0.4. Hope it will work. Okay, remember, if it is higher than 0.3, the maximum should be at the surface. And you can see that at the end, the maximum reaches the surface. Okay. That explains typically why you have wear, for example, at the surface when you have no lubrication. It's very easy to have wear because the maximum is always at the surface.
What's the direction of frictional force?
It should be to the right.
To the right?
Yes, I should check. It should be to the right.
Because on the left side, the stress is becoming maximum first, before.
Yes. I will check later, but I think it's a good question. I will confirm that later.
This condition will lead to
Where? Yes, typically, for example. This is also full sliding or gross sliding. Okay, there is no stick, no slip. Just okay. And I wanted to also to show you the effect on the plastic strain, because this is only stress. Here you have residual stresses and you have all the stresses. This is during loading. And here you have the same for the plastic strain, then which is a scalar here. And then on the left you have the solution for a frictionless contact, and on the right the solution for a friction coefficient that is increasing up to 0.4. Then the maximum is at the Earth's depth first. The maximum increases very quickly, and then at the end the maximum is at the surface. Okay. Then now there is two observations for that. One observation is about the location of the maximum. Of course, this is clearly at the surface. And the second one is about the magnitude of the maximum plastic strain. You can see here that typically we have about is about 0.1%. 0.1%, okay? And here it's about 0.5, it's about 0.5%, 0.6%. Then you increase by a factor of 6 the plastic strain. Okay. Then this is why friction is very important, and when you consider plasticity, you can see even more phenomenon. Then this is simulation. This is the way we use to characterize materials. Then this is, as I said before, this is a nonlinear problem. You have then an endanter, which is a spherical shape. You have the load, which is the vertical axis, and the displacement, which is the horizontal one. This is in nanometer, and on the vertical axis is in millinewton. This is the Earth solution, and when you load, you come to this point. When you unload, you go back to the origin. And for the elastic plastic solution, when you load, you go to this point. Then the difference here is due to the plasticity. And when you unload here, you go back to this point. Okay? And this point, for example, this point corresponds to the depth of the indent. Okay? And this is typically the signature of plasticity. This is a comparison of the contact solvers that we developed in the finite element method using Abaqus. Then there is two load level. This is a relatively moderate plasticity level, and this is more significant plasticity. Then again, the full line corresponds to the elastic solution. The dot line corresponds to the plastic solution, and you can see here different. Here you can see the strain, different strain tensors. The line corresponds to the finite element solver, and the blue symbols correspond to our solvers. And you can see a very good agreement, and everything has been validated, and there is no difficulty for that. And this is typically the type of tip we use to indent the surface and also to characterize materials. And this is. Yes, we should break now. Yes, this is a break. Okay. At what time we restart?
12, 15 minutes, 12 o'clock.
12, okay.